So the clubs in Toastmasters are organized into areas. Areas are organized into divisions, and divisions into districts, districts into regions, and there are more than 300,000 Toast members in, I used to know how many clubs around the world, but we're in more than 120 countries. And Toastmasters International has a structure of governance and officers to be able to run the organization, to provide us the wonderful educational program that we have. So it all starts at the club level, and I must say, we have the best club ever. Yes, bar none. So I haven't been to all of them, I've been to a few, but this is the best for sure. And as part of that governance structure, we have an area director. Her name is Beth Davis Reinhold. And the area directors visit all of the clubs in their area to make sure that the clubs have everything they need to give their members the best possible experience. And so the area directors are required to visit each club in their area twice a year. And Beth Davis Reinhold visited our club about 3 weeks ago or so as her second visit and final visit for this year. And what they do is they then write up a report to the division, and then that goes up to district. And I get to be copied as the president on the report. And the report has, it's a form that she fills out and asks many questions. How do they publicize their meetings? How do they do this? What do they do for that? What do they do well? What could they improve? And I don't think there was anything under what I can say that there is nothing. What can the district and I do to help the club improve? Nothing. I wanted to read you just one of the entries. What does the club do well? They are organized and welcoming. They promote themselves through various media, meetup, word of mouth, picture of winners in local newspaper. They recently started video recording meetings and post the videos on their own YouTube channel. They are very supportive of one another. They have an active mentoring program that shows results. They use technology well. They promoted the Pathways Navigator, Toastmasters Magazine, and the upcoming TLI, Toastmasters Learning Institute. The club is growing, the room is full. So let's give ourselves a hand. Yeah. I thought that, there's my second note, that would be a good introduction for the meeting this evening. So now I would like to ask our guests to introduce themselves. And we'll start over here with Shannon. Guests are welcome to participate in the meeting. We just ask that you introduce yourself, tell us what brought you here, and then at the end of the meeting, we will also ask you what you thought of the meeting. In between, you can participate as little or as much as you'd like. There'll be opportunities. So, Shannon, welcome.
Hi, I'm Shannon Simpson. Happy to be here. I'm here because I want to learn how to speak in front of people with confidence.
All right.
I'm Hannah, and
Hannah.
I'm
sorry.
from Frederick, and I also was the Toastmaster club member in North Carolina.
Okay.
So I heard of the club long before, and I want to participate in learn more.
Okay, terrific. Maria.
My name is Maria Kanacki. I am from Michigan originally. If anybody is familiar with Michigan, we like to do this thing with our hands. I'm from the pinky. There's another for you. I like public speaking. It's something I actually enjoy, so I'm hoping to get better at it by being part of this group and learn from all of you. It seems like a really welcoming group of people, so I'm excited to be here.
Yep, I'm Rob Kanacki, no relation. But I'm here because in my job I do a good number of public presentations. I'm a staff trainer. I'm out in front of people a lot and speaking in those type of environments, so I want to try to hone my skills and just get better at that.
All right, welcome guests.
I'm Dr.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you. Dawal?
Dawal, yes.
Please
Hi,
introduce yourself. Thank you.
hi, my name is Dawal. This is my first day, so actually I wanted to improve my public speaking skills, so that's why I'm here. I did some research on how to improve the skills. So on the Quora, so most of the people suggested to go to Toastmasters, so
Yep.
to be here.
You're in the right place, thank you. And now Parsa will give us our inspiration for this evening.
I read this poem a couple of days ago and I really enjoyed the concept of it, so I wanted to share it with you. The only thing is, the original language for this poem is in Persian. I had to translate it myself, so I'm sorry if a part of the part of concept is missed while I was trying to translate it, and probably the translation is not perfect. The poet called Sohrab Sepehri, and this is just a very short piece of his work. By listening to the sound of water passing by, I realized that my life is passing faster than the water. Living does not worse to be sad for a second. Laugh so hard that you don't even know what sadness is. Yes, that's it.
Larry Riggs is our Toastmaster of the evening, so with that, I will turn over the rest of the program to Larry.
Well, for our guests, let me explain how we do things here. The meeting has three parts to it. The first is prepared speeches. We have 3 of those tonight, all at different levels, and we'll talk about those when they're introduced. The second is what's called table topics, which is kind of a fun thing. The table topics master will call for a volunteer, or if nobody raises their hand, somebody will be voluntold. And by the way, guests can volunteer to come up too. And you're given a topic, and you're given 1 to 2 minutes just to speak on that topic, just as practice, just wing it, just your elevator speech. And then the last part is evaluations. That's where we really help each other to grow. The evaluations are based on the project that the individual is doing, as you'll see when that time comes. And the idea is tell the person what they did right, and give them some ideas of what they can improve. Because really, as I mentioned to you too, this is a learning lab. We're here just to have fun, and this is the perfect place to screw up, because everybody screws up, no big deal. We can all just have a good time together and learn too. So that's how our meeting is run. So the first thing we're going to do is, I'm going to tell you that as Toastmaster, I have a really cool opportunity to not do all the work. In other words, I have helpers. So what I'm going to do is ask each of my helpers to give a description of what they're going to be doing. Our first helper, our grammarian, Beth.
Hello, as grammarian, I will be noting particularly good and particularly bad usage of the language. So colorful phrases that really paint a great image will be noted, and any grammatical mistakes, especially ones that tend to be common among more than one person, I'll note those, and at the end of the meeting, I'll give my report.
My next helper actually has 2 jobs. One would be to supply us with the word of the day, which she'll do in just a second, and the other is, she is the Wizard of Oz. And we'll let her describe both of those.
Okay, the word of the day, do I actually read it or just try to?
Yeah, you might, that way we can.
All right, should I put it over there?
Well, usually we stand up
Where do we usually do this? So I picked a word from, where should I put it? This way?
like standing up right in front of the,
Here?
yeah.
Okay. Like that?
Yeah.
Okay. And everyone see? Okay. So I picked a word, and I chose the word rue because I was trying to think of a word that would be easy to put into a sentence. So the noun for that is regret, sorrow, and the way you use that would say, with rue, my heart is laden, or I rue the day. And so that first part was a quote from the poet A.E. Osman. And the second meaning of the word rue is another noun, but it's actually an herb that's used medicinally that's from Europe. So I didn't know about that. So the word of the day is rue. And then the second role I have is called Wizard of Oz. So I'll be counting filler words like that sort of thing, you know. And also whether people use the word of the day in their speech or in their book.
Next, our timer, David.
So I'll be using this wonderful device to keep track of everyone's time during the presented speeches and during the table topics as well as the evaluations. For today's speeches, we have one icebreaker, which will be from 4 to 6 minutes. At 4 minutes, this light will turn green. That means you're good to go. You could cut it off there or you can keep going up until 6 minutes and 30 seconds, in which the light will be red and you should end your speech. For the second and third speech, there will be 5 to 7 minutes. Same color schema, different range. 5 minutes is green, 7 minutes is red. And then for the table topics, you have 1 to 2 minutes, and for the evaluations, 2 to 3 minutes. And I'll be giving my report at the end of the meeting.
Finally, our vote counter, Tom.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom. I will be your vote counter for this evening. At the end of each one of the sets of speeches, table topics, and evaluations, if you would pick the one person you thought did the best job this evening and write their name on a slip of paper, and then these little pastel buckets will be passed around and put the vote in there, and I will tally them up. And at the end, the person who got the most votes will be given a trophy that they can get their picture taken with. If you have any comments for the people that are speaking, normally we have comment forms on the ballots, but since we're out of the ballots, you can write the comments on the back of the slip, and I'll make sure that person gets that particular comment if you have any constructive or criticisms for them. And if any of you are ruining the day because it's just bad, after the meeting I will be selling my medicinal rue supplement.
Tom commented that we normally have ballots that are labeled, so do Tom a favor. When you're voting for best speaker, put best speaker, and then put the name, best table topic, and etc.
Good idea.
That way they don't get mixed up in a pile. I'm sure Tom will keep them separate anyway. Okay, so those are how our helpers help us. And now we're going to actually get into the speeches. The first speech, this is always exciting when you have somebody doing their icebreaker. The icebreaker is basically introducing yourself to the group. So Erin is going to be doing her icebreaker. She is on the dynamic leadership path, level 1, and she's now going to introduce herself to us. Erin.
My goodness, when I saw my name on the top, being the first speaker, I was like, crap, the first speech. But at the same time, I'm thinking, well, maybe it's a good thing. So I don't have to sit there with my heart pounding much longer. So I can get over it and sit down and enjoy the rest of the club meeting. So I'm glad to be here, and like Beth was saying, there are like 350,000 Toastmasters members, and that means 350,000 icebreaker has been done, and nobody dies. So I think and I look at it, and it seemed like it should be an easy topic because they make it so that you can talk about anything. You talk about yourself. And I was like, okay, that's pretty good. But then the more I think about it, the more I'm like, man, this is hard. What can you talk about? There's so many things. Do I want to go through the chronological order from birth to now? But that sounds kind of, bland. So then I did some research and I get really frustrated. I talked to my mentor, my friend. It's actually harder because someone like myself will go to buffet and I want to eat I want to try everything. Okay, if I go to grocery store or shopping, I want to look at everything and compare stuff. So here I have unlimited material to talk about myself. I mean, this is hard. And so, with some good advice, I finally sat down, pen to paper, and I'm like, I'm just start writing. And you know, I think there's some perfectionistic thing in my head, and I just have to let it out. So I write, and write doesn't have to be clean, doesn't have to be, you know, precise or grammatically correct. I just write. And next thing you know, I start to see picture forming. And I'm like, okay, I'm starting to see some clarity. And I'm starting to see a theme that, you know, that I can talk about. And that's what I decided to talk about myself tonight. And it's about striving for excellence. The reason I picked that theme is because as I am sitting down, doing the work it's supposed to be, not necessarily, I mean, to prepare for this speech more properly, I learned so much about myself as part of the process. The reason is because I realized that most of my life, you know, I pride myself to be a creative, to be with quick wits and, you know, can wing things pretty easily. You know, I'll just make it happen. You know, don't put a lot of effort, but I want a lot of, you know, outcome. And I have made well in a lot of things, you know, like from cooking. You can give me 3 ingredients, I can make you 12 different things, okay? Or book reports. I wait to the last minute, I look at the front, the middle, the back, and boom, I can just put together this report and still manage to get an A. And so I think I got away too much in life thinking that I can just go through without putting a lot of effort. However, I'm also starting to see that as I get older, there's that dissatisfaction. I just can't live with myself doing the 20% and getting the 80% because I want that 20%. Even though it might take 80% of my work, but it will get to the excellence, that quality. And I think that will give me a lot of pride. And I think joining Toastmaster will give me that discipline, the structure that I desperately need. And thinking back in my life, the few things that I did really well, I actually applied myself. I actually put the time in. Yes, I think 2 of them actually because there were people next to me. So Toastmaster is my crutch, if I use the word correctly. And so the 2 things I remembered that I really did well was, so I grew up in Hong Kong. And in the beginning, my grades weren't very good. I was struggling in school. And especially in English, believe it or not. I know, not that I'm having a big head about that, but I was not doing well. My parents were concerned. So they got me a tutor. And because of the tutor, I had to sit down. I had to, you know, understand, I had to read, not just like at school, you know, give you a lot of freedom, you kind of do your own thing. And here I was being held responsible. Every time I met my tutor, I have to answer these questions. I have to recite certain things. So over time, I actually got better. I actually saw the result. And then next thing you know, at my school graduation in Hong Kong, well, our high school, I actually was the top #2 in the whole school with the English grades. And I have to thank the tutor and the discipline. And then another thing, in recent time, my husband and I joined ballroom dancing. So this is something that we wanted to do before we had kids. We tried it, but the next thing you know, we had kids, and then 16 years later, we can go back to dancing because the kids are self-sufficient. And again, it's one of those things I never thought I could dance, but because it's that going, you know, weekly, little by little, I got better. And now my teacher actually often asks me to demonstrate. And I just so surprised. So here I just felt like just being consistent, apply yourself, having a structure versus always trying to think I can get a lot by putting in little. I really think Toastmaster would give me that kind of structure that I need to achieve the excellence and bit by bit to get to the point that I would like to see myself to find pride in that. So I really would love for everybody to support me, to give me input, especially in the beginning, so that I can get better in this journey. Thank you.
This ago, she would rue the day that she compromised. All right. Our next speaker, Srinivas Vangari. Now, Srinivas is doing an interesting speech. In his particular path, you give a speech, you take your evaluation, and then you give that speech again and improve based on the evaluation. So this is Srinivas's second speech on this particular topic. It is called "And You, Are You in Control?" And as soon as he finishes controlling the board, he is in control. Joe's going to help him too. All right, Srinivas.
Are you in control of this miracle called life? You know, life is a pretty recent phenomenon in the history of the universe. Over the last 13.5 billion years ago, it only started last 3 billion years ago, somewhere in the universe. After going through several trials and errors, so many galaxies, so many cosmic furnaces called stars, churning up all the elements, raw material that's needed for life. Finally, universe hits a jackpot in a remote corner of the universe called solar system on planet Earth. Other parts may be wondering, why not me? Why Earth? And Earth may be wondering, why me? Is it really a boon or bane? Life. There's no rhyme. Nobody was ruined about not getting that. So when we're talking about control, let's understand what life is about, and before we can really see are we in control. Are we in control? Oh, okay. That's wrong. The genesis of life on Earth. There are many theories how life started on Earth. The popular theory that a lot of research is based on this one called RNA world. The basic molecule in our bodies, and every living creature, is called RNA, ribonucleic acid. The theory is that early in the Earth's life, some extreme conditions and organic molecules coalesce to form this miracle molecule called RNA that could chain together and coalesce to form complex structures and create proteins that make any organism possible. And there's also another theory called we came from outer world. We are aliens. Have you seen the movie called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus? So that RNA slowly got information captured, and they could retain the information as it tries to replicate itself. And slowly these stable structures called cells came into existence. And the basic characteristics of life at that time was metabolism. It was like absorbing all the other surrounding organic stuff surrounding it and growing itself. And replication in the process. Prokaryote cells without nucleus, there are still cells like that, cyanobacteria, that you see in like algae-like structures in remote corners of the world. And everything else is eukaryotes, cells with a nucleus. And nucleus is the one that holds the information how to replicate yourself. And after about 2 billion years, then life took off. Multi-cell structures, obviously size advantage, right? And NASA's definition of life a self-sustaining system, chemical system, capable of Darwinian evolution. All right? It coined this recent word about Darwinian evolution, so based on his theories. So how your body is made. Now we got the raw material and how to replicate, how to grow into complex structures. And that is your DNA blueprint. So it knows about how to make your body, how to make you. It's a long, if you expand the whole genome, it goes up to moon and back and forth 5,000 to 6,000 times, something like that. The whole, in a single cell, the length of the DNA is that much. Okay, this is 30,000 genes. A gene is a collection of the raw material. It could be few thousand nucleotides to billions of nucleotides. Nucleotides is there's too much biology. But think about that as some basic molecules that collect and make your DNA possible. And you started as zygote, single cell. Now you are 50 trillion cells with 200 different types of proteins that make up your body. But still, I can say that 99.9% of my body is empty. How can I say that? I'm turning into some physics here. From Rutherford experiment, I know that atom is 99.9% empty. So I can say that. Theoretically, by physics. So what does these organisms do? The basic function is survival. Evolution, that is, so you have to get around and get away. And then how is it possible? DNA mutations. Every time the replication happens, the DNA changes, and then the new generations could look like different. Could be completely different species. That's how the theory is. And if you look at the DNA genomics, compare that to these living things, we are 50% same as banana, 70% same as fly, and we are 98% chimp. And then your body completely changes every 7 to 10 years. It means all your cells die and you're with a new set of cells every 7 to 10 years. You're a completely different person. And germs in our body, they outnumber us. So who does it belong to? What does it all mean? It's pretty scary. Is it rueful? I don't think so. Who's in control? Is my body or me? Or me means whatever that me or you. Any answers? You are the captain of the ship. And we don't know what that captain is, but still, I can only sing this song called I Can Only Imagine. I can only imagine what it'll be like after I meet that person, that creation. So the takeaway is, we may think we may own the land under our feet, but the land feels that the other way around.
Our final speaker, Dakar Simba, is going to be setting his up too. He is also in dynamic leadership, just like, or excuse me, yes, dynamic leadership. This is Aaron. And he's giving a speech on research and presenting. And the title of his speech is Lessons from Apollo 13. Dakar.
The moon is about 240,000 miles away from the Earth. April 11th, 1970, about 49 years right now. At that particular time, there was a race to go and put man on the moon. And this was inspired by the late President Kennedy. And also another thing that really drove us and got things to move quickly, the Russians had Sputnik already in the orbit. So we really had to get things going. The Apollo 13 mission is very, very interesting. And I'm going to go ahead and use this particular platform to explain a few things, and so we can take some lessons from what this mission brings about. Right here, who we see, Jim Lovell, he's the commander of the ship. Then we have Fred Hayes, he's a pilot, and Jim Swaggart. The only experienced person here is Jim Lovell, meaning that he is the only person that had previous space experience. Everybody else had just trained on Earth but had never actually gone to the moon. Jim Swaggart, very, very interesting. 2 days before the mission was ready to go, that was, this is like the 9th of April, Ken Mattingly was diagnosed, or the doctor thought he had measles. So he was pulled off the mission. He says, hey, you're not going to space. We're gonna go ahead and replace you with Jimmy Swaggart. So they really intensified the training. Within those 2 days, everything was good, and they managed to be able to take off on the mission to go to the moon. Now, NASA is very good at training its people. When I say 2 days, he's actually a backup to the rest of the team. He had actually trained for about 6 months before that, but they just usually have backups just in case something goes wrong. This is a Saturn V rocket that took the Apollo up into the space. Now, the Apollo 13 has 3 parts. This last part here, this is the service module, and then you have the command module and the lunar module. The service module is where you have all the electronics. They have the oxygen and pretty much where they control everything. The command module is right there. This is where they sleep, and it has a heat shield, and it's the most comfortable. The lunar module is designed for 2 people, and this is what was going to go ahead and take them into the moon. What happens, they orbit the moon, they decouple that particular part, Jimmy Swaggart remains in the command, and that particular spider-looking guy lands on the moon. As we can see here, the command module is designed for 3 people. The lunar module is designed for only 2 people, and this will come into more evidence here as we go by. This is the path to the moon, 242,000 miles. So they take off, and right about there, as you can have, they had a disaster. This is 56, this is another illustration of that. 56 hours into the mission, they have an explosion. And that explosion damages the command module. Completely gone, they are losing oxygen. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and back up just a little bit. Within a few minutes, mission control and the crew decides that, well, we're going to go ahead and scrape the mission and find a way to get the crew back on Earth. Things don't look very good at that particular situation because they are like right there. They are about 20,000 more miles to go. There is a few things they can actually do here. They could go ahead and do an immediate abort and go back, but that's not really possible. They don't have enough fuel, they don't have enough oxygen, they don't have enough power to go ahead and do that. So NASA gets together, they think about, okay, what is the solution? They decide this is what we're going to go ahead and do. We're going to go ahead and loop around the moon, use the moon's gravity and trajectory, and use the free trajectory to go ahead and bounce back and get back to Earth. But the mission doesn't, it sounds simple, but it's not that simple yet. This is the command center on Earth. This here illustrates the damage. When they had the explosion, that's actually what happened. Now, when the explosion happened, they had to move everybody from the command module into the lunar module. And when they moved everybody into the lunar module, because it's designed for 2 people to sustain you for 2 days, they had to cramp 3 people here, be able to keep it going for 4 days.
That creates a problem. They started to have carbon dioxide toxins in there. So they had to come up with a way of how to solve what the problem is. Now, they don't have a lot of tools and implements in there. So the mission control says, okay guys, we're going to go ahead and improvise. We're in a situation right now that we can't just go to Home Depot and get what it is. So they have an exact replica of the lunar module at the command center in Houston. They tell the guys, they call everybody in who has actually ever worked on this particular mission. Says, guys, get everything that's in there and put together. What happened is that they have a round filter, and they had to get that round filter to fit that box there. And they had to use all materials that were actually available in the spacecraft. So the team got together, they went ahead and came up with this concoction here. After they did that, they quickly wrote the procedures, and these procedures were radioed to the crew. And by doing that, they were able to get the toxic levels of the carbon dioxide down. Now, the lesson that we've actually caught so far is that, okay, when they had the explosion, they had to figure out what is important, what is the priority. Within a few minutes, NASA scrapped the mission to go to the moon. Now that wasn't the mission anymore. The mission was to bring the 3 men back on Earth, and that became the important factor of doing that. The other thing that they do, they had very good leadership. They had to remain calm. The flight director, Jim Kranz, tells everybody, guys, calm down, one at a time, no guessing. I want you to rely on the data, no guessing. Because out here in space, you can't go there and rescue people. You get one shot and you cannot make any mistakes. They had never been in this particular situation, so people had to improvise. There's a lot of creativity. And you get things like those when people can actually think freely, have good leadership, and have clear minds, and they know what the priority is. The other things are, when you're in an emergency situation like this, ask for help. When the commander, Jim Livell, goes, Houston, we have a problem. He realized at that particular time that whatever situation we are in, we cannot fix it. So I'm going to go ahead and solicit help. And by him doing that, the people at the command center were able to get everybody to come over and help them. Now, this particular mission by NASA is considered a successful failure. They failed to get to the moon, but they were able to be successful in getting the people back on Earth alive. This is a shot of the back of the moon when they looked around. That's what they see. This is the command module as he approaches the Earth's atmosphere. That's the command center. It enters the Earth's atmosphere because it's at a very high speed, creates a lot of heat, and that's what you see from it. One of the worries they had that because it was very cold and frozen, they were worried that the parachutes were not able to deploy. But luckily, the parachutes were able to deploy, and they were able to land safely. And here, when we see them in the South Pacific Sea, we have the seamen from the Iwo Jima going ahead and picking up and rescuing up the crew. And here we have the celebration of the mission control people putting it together. So what you can see, failures are not necessarily bad. When you're in a particular situation, maybe an emergency situation, learn from the situation, stay calm, and use that situation to move forward. And you can turn that failure into a success.
Now, if you will take one of your blank pieces of paper, great. Best speaker on. And the name of the person who would like to vote. Of course, our guests are free to vote also. And put the votes in the little cans, and they will make their way to Tom. As we go into our next portion, I'll comment real quickly about the speakers. I like inspirational things. And let me tell you, I find very few things more inspirational than what all three of our speakers did, and that is to stand up in Toastmasters and give a speech in a second language, because I don't have a second language. So congratulations, I think they deserve a round of applause for that. So our next section is table topics. So Lisette, would you come up and give us our table topics for this evening?
Okay, so for table topics, what we do is I read, or do I read first, or do they come first?
Oh, we're letting you run it.
Your choice.
Ah, okay, all right.
Master.
All right, what we're going to do is, if you would like to come, this is a very good opportunity for guests or for our members to get some stage time. I'm going to ask you a question if you volunteer to come, and then you will have an hour, I got you, right? You will have a minute and a half to talk about that question I asked. So, can I have my first volunteer? David. Can you read my hand?
Yeah, it says, what book has impacted you? So in recent memory, I read a book. It's called It's Your Ship by Mike Aversham. As a book goes, it was phenomenally written, concise, to the point, enjoyable, great examples, and I was able to absorb these examples. Now, do I get a lot of opportunities to show my leadership, to demonstrate my leadership style? No, I'm an entry-level engineer, so I don't get to tell my boss what to do. But I do get the opportunity to work within a team. And knowing how a leader is supposed to lead gives me the opportunity to work with my leader. Not to tell him what to do, but to understand where he's coming from. You see, when I get told something from the top of the pipeline, sometimes you start to ask questions, is this really necessary? Why do I have to do this, that, and the other thing? But taking control of my ship means meeting my leader halfway, understanding their point of view, seeing where they're coming from, and reaching out and communicating. And having that communication with my boss has led to a stronger relationship, better opportunities for work, and I feel better coming into the office. And so with working within a team, whether you're the leader or you're not the leader, knowing how to lead is beneficial, and that's why I think this book impacted me beneficially.
Okay, I'm going to read out the question and then you can go into it. What motivates you and why? What motivates you and why?
My number one motivation right now is probably money. I've always liked money ever since I was a kid. When I was 3 or 4 years old, I would save every single dollar I got, and I would never spend it. Now what's interesting is I'm still like that. I actually don't like spending money. I just like accumulating money. And what's great is I actually work in the tech field, which is known for making quite a bit of money. So it's not that hard every couple of years to move on to a new and better job. So when I'm at work, I'm always focused on trying to get better because there's a lot of really cool companies out there, like Facebook, who's kind of controversial now. Amazon also has controversy. Google also has controversy. But they do a lot of cool technological stuff. So that's usually what keeps me going these days and what I'm focusing on.
Would you like to be remembered by? How would you like to be remembered and why? What is yours?
Since I took so much time before I figured I'd come here and take the offer on an hour that she gave me. Let's work the time. We only have so much time to live in this particular world. And the kind of impact I would like to make in the world is helping other people learn. By doing that, you are helping them support themselves. It's just like the old saying that give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, and then if you teach them how to fish, you feed them for life. So I think if you're going to make an impact or be able to change a large amount of people, you gift them with an education. And if you do that, you tend to have a much better impact. In Africa, what we've also found out is that the education, once if it's given to the women, it tends to go further than if it's given to the men. Although the men are the ones that have the advantage of actually going to school. But the most impact they found that it's the women. If you educate the women, the girls, the family tends to do a whole lot better. They come back and do better for the village. They're able to share all these things. Men, we just tend to keep things by ourselves. So being here, having got what I have, I start with my own kids, my own family. I impact them and tell them you have to become a lifetime learner. Don't waste time. You only have so much time to live in this world. So you ask yourself, what's your mission? I've been asking my daughter, what's your mission? Not like, what are you going to do? What are you going to be when you grow up? I ask them, what's your mission? So that when she goes to college, she can pick whatever major she wants, and then she does something that she loves. But the question I ask them right now, what's your mission? How do you want to impact the world? How can you make an heaven on earth? So that's how I'd like to impact the world. Thank you.
And I think our little cups didn't make it back up to the end of the table, so we'll pass them up and pass them back down. The next section. Okay. So our three table topics speakers were David, Alex, and Bakar.
Pass it down.
Cool. And now, for final section of our meeting tonight, the evaluations. This is where we really help each other grow. It's a fantastic time. I like to say I've been doing public speaking for decades, and I still love the evaluations because I always learn something. So our general evaluator tonight is Jerry, and he's going to lead us in this section.
My role this evening is to introduce your evaluators as well as give a general evaluation nearer to the end of the meeting. Our first evaluator is Lisa, and she will be evaluating Aaron's icebreaker. Lisa.
Aaron, congratulations. And you didn't die. Right? Isn't that what you said? And that's one of the great things you did. You used humor, which had us all laughing and identifying with that, because most of us have done our icebreakers. We think, oh my gosh. And you did say you were nervous. Were you nervous up here? But you looked very calm. You really did. The only thing that I thought perhaps that made you nervous, or that was telltale sign, is that your rate was a little quick. But otherwise, your mannerisms, your gestures, you brought the audience in, you drew us in, and we wanted to know what your excellence was, what you wanted to strive for, and to admit, in front of all of us, that the 80-20 partition, that was very brave also. No, I got that.
Okay.
I got that. I understood that.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of us like to think that, well, if I don't have to give too much, and I get back so much. But you're striving for something beyond that, which is great. And for an icebreaker, you didn't use any note cards. How cool is that? Because I know when I used mine, I had it up here, and you can use it as a crutch, but you had it in your mind, and you were going for it, which is definitely a positive thing on your first speech. Some of the suggestions that I might have, you did make some eye contact with the audience, but at times, I did see you looking up like you were thinking. And at that point, I was like, oh, no, come back. I want to see your eyes, because I want to be drawn in, and you had, drawn me in, as I think you did with everyone else. The buffet and saying, oh, I love the buffet, and I want to eat it all. Again, humor, and you drew us in. Another suggestion would be catching yourself on your, and what did they call it when I had mine? Comfort words. Mine happened to be so, and I would say so all the time. You used you know. So once you're aware of that, then you can be cognizant of saying, I can't use those two words, and you choose something else, and it's on a conscious level now. Well, no, and you don't, and because you're in the moment, you were sharing with us, and it was fabulous. So you don't understand the comfort words you use. And that's why it's so great to get the feedback. Another thing was that I think that could really add some spark to this and intensity would be to start your searching for excellence in the beginning, and then carrying that throughout the speech. You brought that in maybe in the second half, and I think that if you had brought it in the first half, that would even make it more intense. Excellent, very proud of you, and congratulations, you didn't die.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next evaluator is Joe. He's doing the evaluation for Srinivas. Joe.
This is Srinivas' second speech where he uses the evaluation feedback from his prior speech in this one. So he's supposed to implement that, some of the suggestions from that. And he's supposed to demonstrate that he made some improvement. So one of the things was movement. And another thing was slowing down using what I'm going to call technobabble and the abbreviations that you tend to use as well. And not to turn around and look at the slides. I think last time he was reading a lot of the slides. So he did make improvement, I think, in all of those areas. You saw him up here. He was stood to one side using the slides, and looked up only to reference where he was in his slide. And then he moved to the other side when he found it. So I think he did a great job. He also had good eye contact. He looked at everybody. I think he had good eye contact last time when I looked at the review evaluation. He had good structure too. So I think and the slides were nice and clean. He patiently went through them. There weren't a lot of extra slides that he had to pace himself very quickly through. So he did spend a lot of time just slowly going through it. It was very clean. His execution was good too. One suggestion that he might want to work on is make sure everything's working before he gets up here, so he doesn't have to apologize for something going wrong. That's sort of the mistake we all make when something goes wrong. You apologize. Some people might not even notice that something went wrong if you don't point it out to them. So, but one thing he could do is actually click through everything to make sure it starts when he's ready to go. Just make sure before he turns it on the screen, click, instead of waiting when it's on the screen and it doesn't click. So that was one suggestion. He could use a little more vocal variety, but I thought it was appropriate for what he did use. He generally made a lot of good improvements in what he did do. There were some moments when he was starting out where the technobabble was a little unclear. So he might I would rue mentioning some of those words, you know, the biologics, but he did it pretty well. And I think if you didn't hear it the first time he used it, he mentioned it the second time. So it was really good. So really the only thing that I might suggest you use is maybe I mean, it's hard to say what you could do better because you did it well the first time. But it's always hard doing the same speech over and over again. But you could see where you did the speech a second time, it was much better than you had the first time. So when other people do the speech, you don't necessarily have to use the same speech again. You just have to use the feedback from the prior speech. So I would have probably done something totally different. But you did something equally as well as use the same speech again and made it easy to evaluate. But on the whole, you did a great job. And the only suggestion I might suggest is be a little bit more prepared with your visual aids, because it's always hard to try to make sure when you're using strange equipment to make sure it works. So thank you, Srinivas.
Thank you, Joe. Our final evaluator is Alex. He will be evaluating Bakari's speech.
So, Bakari is working in Dynamic Leadership, L1, Pathways, Research and Presenting, and Lessons from Apollo 13. I think research and presenting can be a little challenging sometimes because we all find different topics interesting. So to bring that here and engage people isn't always straightforward, and I thought you actually picked a really great topic. One of the things I liked is when you started out, it was in chronological order, so you laid out the background. Why are we going to the moon in the first place? I was born in the 90s. Things to know. And as you progressed, you could see how we got from point A to point D to point C to point D to point E. I really also liked your graphics. It's very easy to get carried away with graphics and provide way too much information. People always say, rocket scientist, right? You kept it simple, but you had the important information there that we needed. And I distinctly remember that part where you showed the different parts of the spaceship. I was reading through it. It was simple and I was easy to comprehend, and you didn't lose me anywhere in there. I also like that at the end you did highlight why it succeeded. You went through all the different points. You laid out basically what happened, the disaster that essentially happened up there in the space, and then you went through on the ground control, they were calm, and that they asked for help, and the people up there had to work in tight spaces and they had to work together, which is all really great information. And I really did feel you had enough information, but not too much. It was great for a 7-minute time frame. Now, like everything, there's a few things that I think you should work on. So your intro was pretty good, but I did notice you started out by saying the moon is 240,000 miles away, and that just seemed kind of random, and then you kind of went into your topic. And later you mentioned that again. So maybe you just had to rehearse a little bit more, or maybe you were just going up here and recalling some facts and it just kind of came out. But that was otherwise. Did have some ums and ahs, nothing too big. I also felt that your transitions weren't completely smooth. I did feel like you were trying to recall a little bit of information. So the main thing I'd say is if you have time, I felt like you were 1 or 2 rehearsals away from it being just a little bit more smoother, but it was otherwise really good for me. And the last thing is, I think your conclusion could have been a little bit more powerful. So you build up to that point, and I felt like just to close it, you could have been like, imagine you're in space. You're 240,000 miles away from home. Imagine being in that situation. But despite all that, you managed to work together, come together, and succeed and find success in failure, or something like that. But otherwise, I really liked it.
continue in the vein of our third and final section of the evening, being the feedback and things. You have an opportunity right now to vote on your evaluators. The first evaluator was Lisa evaluating Aaron. Then we had Joe evaluating Srinivas, and finally Alex evaluating Bakari. And while you're filling those out and making your votes count, we're going to hear from those helpers that we introduced in the very beginning of the meeting. Our first helper is the timer, and that being David.
So on time, everybody did very well. Aaron, 6 minutes, 11 seconds, so you're under the 6 minute, 30-second threshold. Srinivas, same deal, 7 minutes, 21 seconds, you're just under. Bakari, 9 minutes, 58 seconds. You made a reference to that, taking the hour. Myself, Bakari timed me. I was at 1 minute, 47 seconds. Alex was at 1 minute, 7 seconds. And then Bakari, for your table topics, 1 minute and 53 seconds. Lisa, for your evaluation, 3 minutes, 39 seconds. Joe, for your evaluation, 3 minutes, 14 seconds. And Alex, for your evaluation, 2 minutes and 56 seconds.
Beth, please give us the grammarian report.
The grammarian comments on grammar, language usage, and also the word of the day. For the word of the day, rue, or derivatives thereof, Larry used it, Srinivas used it twice, Joe used it, and Tom used it twice. Did I miss anyone? I couldn't actually find anything to comment on in the negative other than one very small thing. I should call it a little thing. And I didn't hear any language that was particularly vivid to comment on. The very little thing, Alex, a little bit more smoother, tripped me up for a minute, and I said, well, since it tripped me up, I might comment on that. It's a little smoother, or more smooth, or just more smooth. Forget about a little bit. They're not.
Yeah, I think
just
more smooth
better. Or more smoothly. So we just don't want to try to use too many words in a single phrase. That's all. The only advice I have to give as the grammarian this evening.
Thank you, Beth. Jody, can you tell us how we did with the counting?
Okay, let's see. Beth had 2 uhs and 2 ums. Parsa had 2 ums. David had 2 uhs and 1 Let's see, Aaron, 4 uhs and 7 ums and 3 you knows. Srinivas had 1 you know, but other than that, Bakari had 6 uhs and 5 ums. Lizette had 1 Joe had 3 uhs and 1
As far as giving feedback on the general meeting as well as our evaluations, I'd just like to give the club in general a round of applause because we really stepped up. It was one of the first sunny days. We were all rushing to get in here at the last second. David started the meeting just crack on time, and we managed to really improve how we did some of those beginning stages so that we had more time for those things we want to hear and what we came here to do, which is to speak. So great job with that. I'm going to start with general evaluations and then go into anything that happened in the evaluations just for the sake of chronological order. Beth, you kicked off the meeting essentially from the presidential report. I want to throw out, and this might even be something for the board to think about, but that section actually gives you just 1 minute. And you gave something that was pertinent for our meeting. Maybe we want to think about giving you more time to do that, because that final part that you get as the president speaking at the end for club business and things like that, doing it at that time would have been impactful. You hit when the time was right, and I feel like that's something we have almost every meeting, so it might be something for us to give you a little bit more time in that particular section. And specifically what I'm talking about is when you were telling us about the evaluations from our leadership in Toastmasters and how we're doing as a club. Again, the helpers were brief, to the point. We actually started the meeting after Beth's introduction and things about 4 minutes behind schedule. The helpers got us caught up within 2 minutes. And then throughout the speaking section, we teetered around 2 to 4 minutes late. That gave us an opportunity, Larry, because we did have a scheduling change that we didn't announce during the meeting. We had one less speaker, one less evaluator. We actually had time probably for one more table topic, because we didn't have that evaluation that was going to take up about 3 minutes. So something to think about in that timing and the jostling of the meeting. The evaluations, Lisa, I loved the two-way communication that you had with Aaron. It was a conversation. Aaron gave to you, you took it in stride. That is a skill that not many of us appreciate, because we aren't often asking questions and getting responses in this setting. That was very neat to see. One opportunity you have is at one point you use the room to this effect with poor Shannon. You had the full back to Shannon. It's tough. Aaron's right here. I just noticed that because I was sitting here and I know Shannon was new. So that's one opportunity for you. Joe, there's one thing I noticed in your evaluation. You gave it as if it was a speech using he, and then near the end you switched to first person and talking directly to him. So you might generally want to pick one or the other. And Alex, I really loved the specifics that you used. You were very concrete. And as far as giving opportunities to Bakari, I guess I was already thinking about what I had to say when I came up, so I missed any of that. So that is soup to nuts, the meeting to this very point. Our next section goes to the Toastmaster to present the awards. Larry.
Before we do the awards, I noticed one thing seems to be missing from the agenda, and that is hearing from our guests. We always like to hear from our guests before, in other words, introduce yourself, and afterwards we like to hear what you thought of the meeting.
Isn't that the VP map?
Yeah.
That's after the awards.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's the VP map.
Okay, well, we're going to let the VP of membership do it. I haven't been Toastmaster in a while. Okay, so we're going to start off with our table topics.